Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. And today, as you'll see in the title, I'm going to do some explaining here, first of all, but you'll also see in the title 2024 NBA End of Season Awards. And obviously now it's become an annual tradition. Grayson Hill drops by to talk about those awards. You'll hear our MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, all the way down to Executive of the Year, All NBA, First Team, Second Team, etc. We get into some really great discussion. It goes about an hour and a half. Definitely appreciate the support, no matter what awards you're looking for to hear about. If you have any feedback, let us know your awards in the comments below. Just keeping in mind, the kind of disclaimer at the top here is that you'll hear kind of weird transition at the beginning, potentially, and then at the end, you'll hear me say, like, let's talk about those awards. You'll hear maybe cut out that a little bit. I don't know. I haven't decided how I'm going to do it exactly. But we were going to post the whole episode of us talking about, like, our regular awards, and then also I was going to schedule while I was gone. You'll hear me talk about it in the open. I'll be on a cruise. I'll be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the Bahamas. I won't have any access to anything, and so I wanted to get a pod scheduled for you guys. So you'll hear our totally not real NBA awards, still workshopping the title as we speak. So it'll go out Wednesday, the following week, so I believe the 24th. But you'll hear, as you're hearing this at the beginning, you'll hear this intro, and you'll hear the regular awards following on that Wednesday before. So hope that makes a lot of sense there. Don't forget, Two Pointers is sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor. We greatly appreciate their support as well as your support if you use the link in the description below and use the code Two Pointers, TWOPOINTERS. If you're going to any NBA playoff games, concerts throughout this summer, baseball events, sporting events, whatever it is, we're able to get you $20 off that first purchase, code Two Pointers. And again, your support using that code and link do help me support this show, which helps bring out the best content we possibly can. Greatly appreciate the support from the listeners, the viewers, and as well as SeatGeek for their partnership. Without further ado, let's jump into the awards with Grayson.
All right, as you heard in the intro, we're back here today. NBA End of Season Awards. I promise I didn't just not watch the NBA for 45 days when the NCAA tournament basically got kicked up there. But it was the more exciting stretch of basketball, if we're being real with each other. As much as I love the NBA, it just wasn't the time for it. Thank God for League Pass for giving us the condensed version of games, going and watching some of the moments that you really care about, which is the fourth quarters and such. Enough about that. Obviously, as you see in the title of the intro, a person who's been here many, many times, Grayson Hill, how are you?
I'm good. The Oklahoma City Thunder are the 1 seed. I have not been able to say that in a decade. So, life's good over here in Thunderville. But like I always say with these award things, I will do my best to be somewhat objective after we get through the MVP and just kind of give my honest thoughts on awards. As always, I appreciate Trevor having me on here, and it's going to be another good one.
What's crazy to me is I'm pretty sure we had the conversation. I don't know. I didn't go back and listen to it. But were they the 1 seed when we did midseason? Because we did midseason basically at the midpoint. I mean, it was like game 43.
They were flirting with it? I don't think so.
They may have been tied for second or something like that. The fact
I think right there. Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing it up is I vividly remember a conversation to the effect of, can you believe all this and this and this that we're sitting here and that they could finish I remember saying verbatim, they could finish this year and be a 1 seed. And I said, the fact that that's the possibility, it's insane.
I did not think it was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, lo and behold, here we are, and they freaking are. So the reason I bring it up is because there's just a lot that, it's going to play into a lot of these choices. Now, if they were like the 7 seed, these are going to be a lot more.
Right.
I don't even know the right word I'm looking for, but these would be a lot more.
It's a whole different context.
Yeah. It would be, yeah, and that's what makes these so fun, which is why we're going to add in some other awards as well. For those that are new here, we try to throw in some interesting awards towards the end. A couple of them being, I'll read them off real quick while I'm thinking about it. We did throw an Executive of the Year because I just want to talk about somebody that makes sense for this and kind of talk about why when you really think about why it needs to be talked about. And it's a legitimate award that's voted on, so forgot to include it in midseason. Honestly, it doesn't really make sense at the midseason mark, but enough of that. All NBA first, second, and third teams, all rookie first and second teams, which we'll get to why we did both the full team there. This is basically pretending Grace and I have a vote. All defensive first and second team, and then we have the included ones that we kind of threw together, added, whatever you want to call it. LVP, also known as the least valuable player. League Pass MVP, it's a Bill Simmons favorite. Biggest surprise team. Don't even know why we're doing that one then, but we'll do it when it comes up. Most disappointing team that should have been relocated last year. I cannot wait to talk about that because I think there's a really interesting case. Should have been fired last month award, aka the Adrian Griffin Award, and we will be renaming that award this year when we get to it. So, spoiler on that one. Play-in team most confident in making a run, and then playoff team we are most confident in letting us down. Who's going to drop the ball? No pun intended. And then finals team, I have an interesting question for it, and then we'll pick the winners and stuff because this is going to go out Wednesday, April 17th. And then the next actual basketball thing you'll hear from me on this show will be 2 weeks from the time this episode goes up because you're going to see us two again. I'm basically just prefacing what's going to happen, and then we'll actually get started. You're going to see us again next week, but it'll be a recording that we do this week. It's going to be really confusing. Basically, we'll be talking about a completely unrelated topic to the playoffs as they currently are played, but the topic is related to playoffs. So it will make sense when you hear it. I'm not trying to spoil that now. So my question to start with this is, there's obviously a 65-game minimum for award eligibility. I hope you stuck to it. I never actually said it because I assumed that we would treat this like a real ballot. Thank you. How many players, if you don't know the number, that's fine. This is a trivia question. How many players do you think were fully eligible? And I don't actually know, by the way, if 65 is for every single award because there was guys that like had betting odds even when the season finished that I don't think played 65 games. We'll get to that. But I treated every single award, even the fake ones, as 65-game minimum. I hope. But at least the real ones. How many players do you think were fully eligible for an award based on the criteria out of 500 in the league or whatever it was?
You can almost cut it in half because rotation guys, guys that are in that top 7 or 8, you can kind of lop them off just because it's tough to not have those coach decision nights. I would say for any award, 120-ish, 150-ish maybe.
It's closer to 150.
Too high.
Okay. No, it's good. Closer to 150. I'm just making sure I get the correct number of actual NBA players to give you a percentage because when I did the percentage originally, I almost couldn't believe it of guys that registered a minute this year. This is based on StatHead. Shout out to StatHead because I actually subscribed this year for the first time. It's incredible, and I don't know why I didn't pay for it before. Fun fact: Scoot Henderson was dead last in win shares this year, which is a daunting number. There's some interesting guys down at the bottom. There were 572 players that registered a minute in the NBA this year. 177 of them are eligible for the awards.
Oh, wow. I think I'd be a little high.
Yeah, so when you do that math, doing it on the fly here, 30% of the NBA are actually eligible for an award. So I guess the more I think about it, the question I have is, are we okay now, a full calendar year removed from the award being deemed the 65-game minimum here? Are we okay with it now?
Yeah, I don't think we have like a glaring omission at risk this year because of that necessarily. Obviously, in a perfect world, there's no injury sliders in Philadelphia, and Embiid is right back in this MVP conversation. But outside of that, nothing comes to mind. I didn't have anyone bring me great pause when I sat down to do this. Like, man, I wish I could put him in here, but he played 64, but he played 60. I did my best to stick to the 65. I think that's a reasonable amount of games just because, you mentioned a third of the entire league is eligible for that. I think if the players we tend to think of as the guys that we're going to be voting for, if they can get, in the top 70th percentile of players as far as getting on the court, staying on the court, you can't control injuries. In a perfect world, we'd have none of them, but that's just not reality. Especially as the old guard kind of makes their way out, the guys we grew up watching, LeBron, Durant, Paul George, etc. It's going to be tougher for them, I think. But I think 65 is a decent bar, even 1 year in. I think I'm happy it's not way too low or way too high. Like there's no glaring issue with it yet. I suspect there will be a bubble case to come where a guy's 62 and it's just clear he should be up for something in some capacity. We're like, well, what if we bump it to 60? What if we bump it to that discussion will come, but I don't think we need to have it yet. So I'm taking that as a good sign.
I think ultimately I'm with you. And the reason I bring it up is because the only one that was going to come up was going to be Tyrese Halliburton. He finished with 69 games. And it felt like he came back and it was rushed, and that may have impacted a lot of where he standed on the real ballot coming up in a few weeks or months at this point, which is stupid. But second of all, on the real ballots that we're talking about today, which is our own, Just some notable names that were under 65. Brandon Ingram at 64, Walker Kessler, Kevin Herter, Dario Saric, Alperen Şengün with 63, Karl Anthony Towns with 62, who isn't technically back, I guess, right? Jalen Duren at 61, Jimmy Butler with 60. But we're really going to vote for him anyway. Scotty Barnes with 60, Jamal Murray with 59. That's an interesting one. Obviously, he would have had to play. Would it have been really that close? Kyrie with 58. It's crazy to think he's played this whole year, but yet he's only played 58 games. It's nuts.
Right.
Chris Paul with 58. Jonathan Isaac, which I guess technically now looking at this, that actually changes one of my ballots. So I
that's a guy for sure. Yeah.
Change that on the fly, I guess. My apologies for not checking every single player. You know what? Don't really care. Donovan Mitchell 55. Laurie Markkinen 55. My point is I think you're right. So Trae Young didn't have 65 either, just as an idea. So really quick, last time we did this was mid-season, which is obviously at the time didn't really care what the final result was going to be. It was what we've currently done at the time. I'll read my just like real ballot, the real ones that would talk about MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, etc. I had Shea for MVP, Chet for Defensive Player of the Year, Victor for Rookie of the Year, Malik Monk for Sixth Man of the Year. Most Improved, I had Tyrese Maxey. Coach of the Year, I had Mark Dagnall. Coach Player, I had Damian Lillard. And then we'll get to first teams later. So who'd you have as well, just for a barometer of what people can hear?
Yeah, so I had Shea for MVP, Rudy Gobert for Defensive Player of the Year. I had Victor as the Rookie of the Year. I was with you on the next couple. Sixth Man, I had Malik Monk. Most Improved, I had Tyrese Maxey. And Coach of the Year, I had Mark Dagnall. And then clutch was Lillard for me as well, with a decent case of LeBron thrown in.
I do remember the LeBron thing. I thought that was interesting. So my last question, and then we'll jump into it. It's been 10 minutes, obviously. I asked you this at midseason because I think it was an interesting thought. What was the award that you sat down of the major 6 or 7, not the ones we'll get into later that we both agreed pre-recording that we spent way too much time on, probably for a hypothetical. But which of the major 6 or 7 awards did you spend the most time on and struggled with on the decision?
Prime Rookie of the Year, honestly. I think this is one of those years we just have 2 excellent candidates. In a perfect world, Chet has this season, last season, and this gets cleared up tremendously. But I think that, even as it stood midseason, as much of a Thunder fan as I am, I think we have to recognize the just incredible season, even at the halfway point that Victor was having. He's ramped up since then. He cleared the games played threshold with relative ease. I think the minutes have bumped up a bit. The usage rate's likely higher as they've kind of, I wouldn't say eased him in, but you can kind of tell that he's being entrusted with more being the best player in an NBA franchise in year 1, even in year 0.5 when we last spoke about this stuff. So I think that's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, for me, it was probably Most Improved Player, but I'll get to why in a little bit.
That's also
after that, it might be DPOY, but we'll figure out that as well. So let's rip the Band-Aid off. I would be a horrible host if I didn't ask out the gate who that you have for MVP based on a couple of factors, based on the fact that this is definitely one of the more interesting MVPs probably in the last 10 years. And second of all, the shirt you're wearing. So first of all, for those that are watching on YouTube, there's your nice little, thumbs up for the YouTube audience. For the audio audience, you'll find out here right now. Who do you have for MVP?
My MVP decision has not changed. It's still Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This team down the stretch missed him a bit. He had a little bit of a quad injury. They were very careful in bringing him back against. He didn't play down in Charlotte, unfortunately, but they still, despite that, got the 1 seed. They had a really bad week in April. Still got the 1 seed. Denver maybe lost on purpose to San Antonio. I don't know. We could look at that 5-second violation for hours. But I think that, if you said preseason, what does someone have to do out of the West to win MVP? You probably said, we'll be the 1 seed, meaning you're better than Denver. We beat Denver 3 out of 4 games. Jokic missed one of those. I'm well aware. So I will say 2-1 when both candidates were on the floor. Shai had a turnaround jumper against Denver in Denver to win the game to ultimately decide the 1 seed. That's a little revisionist, but that fits the narrative, so I'm going to include it. And I think that, like you said, this is one of the more polarizing cases since, I think, Harden Westbrook, back when the last time a Thunder player took this award home. So I think that between the two, there's not a wrong answer, but I just think for all the reasons that we've said kind of this Thunder team and the catalyst behind it, it's pretty clear that it's Shea. The net rating of the Thunder when Shea is on the court without his next two guys in Chet and J-Dub is higher than Denver with Jokic without Murray and
Michael Porter, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
One of the other guys that isn't Jamal Murray.
Right. Yeah. The third, whoever you want to designate the third guy is. And it was close, but I think that the 51 30-point games, you want to get into like just counting stats for Shea, is just absurd. He averaged, I think, 30.9 on the season when all was said and done. 35 and 5 with 2 steals on north of 50% shooting. The list of guys who have done that begins and ends with Michael Jordan and Steph Curry. Both guys had MVPs. I think both are to most top 10 all-time players, especially at guard. So I think that, the case for Jokic, and this isn't the only reason, but the biggest reason I think is, well, he got robbed last year, so can we do it again to him? But I don't think that last year's mistakes should snowball into more mistakes this year. I think that reasonable people outside of Philadelphia realize Jokic should have gotten a first-grade MVP. I said in our Dynasty basketball group chat today that Daryl Morey wept to the extent of a flood advisory in back channels across the NBA for 2 weeks because, one, he knew that team was not getting out of 2 playoff rounds again, and two, because there's a lot of dust on banners in Philadelphia, so they have to pursue individual things, which I'm not saying Embiid was a bad choice for, but I think that the fact that he hasn't played in Denver in like 8 years and keeps ducking Jokic has to count for something. So, last year aside, I don't think any of their seasons should matter except for this one, which I realize is kind of putting blinders on. That's not the true spirit of the MVP, whether you agree with it or not. But I think that if we're going to mark in NBA history who had the most important season to their team this year, it has to be Shea. I can say 1 seed 100 more times. I didn't believe it preseason. I didn't believe it midseason. It really doesn't feel real now, to be honest with you, that we're going to get the winner of the loser-winner play-in game. And so I think, every Timberwolves burner on Twitter says free throw merchant. Same amount of free throws a game as Luka. I think he's 6th in the NBA in points in the paint. Every player included. Jokic is obviously above him. But for a guard, that's just incredible. He's got like 63% true shooting this season. Him and J-Dub in the clutch in tandem are incredible. We saw it in the Garden. We've seen it in Denver. Time and time again, Shea has come through. In the clutch, I think he was among that chase group for the clutch award. I don't think he should win it. He was just kind of there if you look at the odds boards. But I just think, yeah. And if it's me being biased, then sue me. But I'm not the only one saying it. It's not just Thunder fans saying it. I think there's a lot of respected people in the media saying it. And Skip Bayless. So, for whatever that's worth.
I was wondering if you were going to clarify what you meant by that, because I was like, wow, that's quite the title. So this is my problem. I would not want anybody else to be making this award pick with me. First of all, I want to make that abundantly clear, right? For a lot of different reasons. For the bias alone, like that's worth every bit of the last 4-minute monologue, which I appreciate. I think there should be more monologues on this podcast. I don't do a good enough job of it. This is actually, I think, the conversation around this MVP battle, I'll call it, that I think is going to be understated. I want to be clear on that. Is you're going to hear First Take talk about it. You're going to hear all these big talking head shows talk about it as like, what's the reason for this guy or that guy? They'll spew a bunch of stats at you, whatever, right? By the way, your case was completely compelling. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is actually a bigger argument that happens in college basketball more now that I think won't happen enough for this award. This basically is, how much do you really buy into analytics? Because it literally comes down. I'm just going to read it to make it abundantly clear, the unbiased thought through this, and I'll give you my answer at the end of it. So Jokic is first in win shares with 16.3. Shea is second with 14.6. So if you just want to throw that out the way, that's a marginal difference. But then you really look at some of the stuff, and again, you know how I feel about let's see what this says versus let's see what my eyes tell me for 82 games, right? Jokic played 79 games. Shea played 75. The one thing that I think people will argue about the games thing is like Jamal Murray, we just talked about, played less than 60 games, which is, that's a guy being the leader of a team, but he's been that for years. So really, what do we expect there? So we talked about win shares, and I think I wrote them down just before they finalized. So it's actually 17 to 14.6, still not a huge gap. And then I'm going to lead you all the stats that Jokic leads in. Offensive rating, defensive rating, offensive win shares, defensive win shares per 48, offensive box plus minus, defensive box plus minus, box plus minus, VORP, PER, and he has a less usage percentage by 3%. Leads in assist percentage, leads in rebound percentage. Again, some of those kind of skewed, right? Being honestly, he's basically more of a point guard than a big anyway. I don't know my answer, and I just read you every stat imaginable that we have to evaluate players for 82 games.
I mean, if Daryl Morey could talk over that last year, I don't see why Shea can't play over that this year. But I will acknowledge, absolutely, when you go do like the analytics deep dive, it should be Jokic for the last 5 years and the next 10, probably.
That's the crazy thing, though. You know how I feel about the guy. I've watched him, but just not as much as you have, Shay. But I've watched him more than just about anybody you probably know that watches the NBA to an extent and has a platform. I don't know how I can't give it to Jokic. I really don't. Like, I sat here for 3 weeks because we knew we were doing this podcast for months. But I sat here for 3 weeks and I legitimately cannot talk myself in either direction. And ultimately, it comes down to how much do you value what we see versus what happens, and whether it's a correction from last year or not. It's not for me. I voted for him last year. You know that. If I had a vote where people's lives were riding on it, I would feel horrible voting against either of these two. That's the issue. And like ultimately, I don't have this overarching point. I just want people to be abundantly known that this is really an argument against what you really believe versus what you really see. My eyes tell me one thing, the numbers tell me another, but these both guys are incredible. And I think just for the sake of the fact that I think it's that close, the public discourse tells me it's Jokic. I think you may have alluded to that a little bit there a minute ago. The public's telling you don't look at the odds or anything. Like, people can do that all they want. Vegas knows what they know.
Which shapes it a bit, but yeah.
But like, I can't sit here and look at all these numbers and then watch Jokic for 79 games and not tell you that I don't have a convincing thought that he's not the MVP. So for the sake of the fact that I knew was going to be its own carved out 10 minutes, I think it's probably Jokic by literally the smallest margin possible, and I don't feel good about it even 20 minutes later. So,
does your answer change if he had won it last year, if this was for the 4P?
No, because I think he probably deserves a 4P. If I'm being real with you, I don't have voters fatigue. If a guy is the best player in the NBA, that's why I've always said I think LeBron should have won 6 in a row. Like, no questions asked. From
it should be its 2009 and its own set of parameters. Yeah.
Whatever he had at the time, right? People should. It's like the same thing with the people that bring like. And this is, at that point, what kind of NBA debate do you want to have? But there are people that bring up, there's a choice, a few of them that you know who I'm referring to, that bring up the playoffs in these arguments. And I'm like, guys, give me a freaking break. Like, it is not.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I have to separate season to season. And like, I don't think voter fatigue is a thing. It's the same argument you're going to have with Victor. Do you really think the NBA do you think the NBA award people who are the same award people that are probably 4 times our age who have had a vote for that long? Do you really think they're going to get voter fatigue from Victor? Probably not.
No chance.
So why should I change that now? Yeah. Right. That's what again, I'm having this open dialogue with you because my pick comes from a proper place.
Oh, for sure.
And I still feel terrible about it. Like I am telling you to your face that it's not Shea, and like I still sat here and I'm like, am I wrong? Probably.
Yeah. I mean, if you said Luka, I'd be a little more animated. But yeah.
Fair. 100%. I didn't even consider, again, by the way, for people that are listening to this wondering like who's 3, 4, and 5, I didn't even tell you to do that because I don't do it. We're not really voting it if we were.
That's just clear.
Lucas 3. I would have had Luka 3, Giannis 4, Brunson 5. Or you can literally throw up anybody.
Giannis, but those are the 5. I think.
We'll get to that. I have a thing about that later. Brunson and Giannis. I think it's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Last thing on this, I didn't mention it through my entire page notes on this. Against the top 10 in point differential, I believe was the factor there. 27 games each, Oklahoma City and Denver. The Thunder were 19-8 in those games, and Denver was 14-13. And I don't have any more context on that as far as who they played, when they played them.
We know Jamal Murray probably didn't play a percentage of those. Like, it's just that's the thing to think about. Well, and the other thing I didn't mention that it ties to what you're saying, the records are identical, 57-25. Yeah. And the head-to-head, if that's really how close it is, I probably should have voted Shea, right? The head-to-head would tell you that.
I'm not even with that in my favor. I don't think head-to-head should ever decide it because, like I said, one of the games Jokic missed, it's still 2-1 head-to-head. Like that's.
But the fact that this isn't a pick'em is crazy. The fact that this isn't a pick'em on every platform, I understand how betting works and I understand how odds work. But the fact that these two teams are 57 and 25, and the only reason the Thunder are ahead of them, offense or not, is that they won 3 out of the 1 or whatever the tiebreaker is
Shea hit a
in this
game winner
division.
against them. Yeah.
Basically. And that's great.
Yes,
and
won the
I think
division
y'all
as well.
deserve the 1 seed. 100% think y'all deserve the 1 seed. That's not the argument. The argument is if it's really this close, what whether it's the two of us or whether it's people that are making the vote professionally or it's people that are arguing this professionally or not, what you eventually have to draw a line. And the whole point I was making, to be clear to you in the audience, I was drawing the line at eventually my eyes have to back up what the numbers say and vice versa, and that's what they did. And like that was the only thing I could say that differentiated one guy versus the other. That shows you how close it really was.
I mean, Jokic has been greater for longer. I'll absolutely see that. And I think maybe it's just he's more of a known quantity. He's not sneaking up on anybody, nationally or otherwise, and he's still this good. He is still the best player in the world, which is not what the MVP award is, but it oftentimes has been. Although, like you said, LeBron should have a dozen of these things at this point. But whatever, LeBron's standard is so clear. Any other player ever in the history of anything, I think that's almost he's like an alien. Him and Tiger Woods, as far as expectations go across sports in any era, are just you can't even see the bottom of the ceiling people hold them to. But
it just doesn't the whole fatigue thing and just this whole argument as a whole. Like the fact that Larry Bird's the last 3-time MVP in a row is ridiculous.
We should have had a couple. Yeah.
Like, hello? Like, did Michael Jordan not exist in that same time frame? LeBron? Dwayne Wade? I'm just giving you all these kind of names. Dwayne Wade should not have been the third name I brought up, but you get my point. Like, Luka.
He's in the mix.
Like, Jokic.
Yeah,
I'm naming guys that could have been at least in that top tier. Harden, another one. Harden probably could have won a couple in there together, right? Like, I mean, there's just a name. Durant
Giannis
probably could have won 2 or 3 in a row there.
Yeah.
Correct? Giannis, another one. Exactly. We just rattled off freaking 40 of them. And, like, the fact that, and I'm pretty sure Jordan didn't win 3 in a row. I feel like the NBA history brain in me is, like, making sure that's right. And I'm second guessing myself. But I don't think he ever won 3 in a row. They don't have it listed. They have the championship listed in order there. So regardless, all right. Anyway, people get my point. Basically, I'm pretty sure the whole stat comes up as Larry Bird would have been the last one, and then Jokic, if he had done 3 in a row, would have been those two. I remember that being a discourse. So 25 minutes later, we ultimately landed on Jokic for me, Shea for you, and I don't feel great about it. You do, which is ultimately what I expected to happen. Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm going Wemby. I'm going Wemby.
I'm so freaking glad that you did this. All right, let's do it. Let's crack this open because
it's again there are other deserving names, but I mean, come on, what are we looking at? I mean, I'm not even going to try and shoehorn Rudy or Chet or no. I don't know how you. I mean, he has captivated the league. 3.6, I believe, is what he landed on blocks a game, which is absurd. That's got to be top 20-ish all-time single season. I'm sure there's guys way back when that have 4 or 5 a game. I think the record's like 5 points.
While you're giving your point, I'm looking it up because shout out to StatHead. You can literally criteria anything and just put in like players with this criteria all time.
Yeah.
While you're talking about it,
Whiteside had a crazy season.
He did. It was like 3.6 or something stupid like that. Yeah.
Okay, so he's like ballpark. I think more recently. But I just think I don't know how you watch this guy. He's going to win another award, one of the ones we inserted into this later on. But I had not watched a ton of Spurs games because outside of him, that team is just laughably, absurdly terrible and unwatchable. But I made a point to really sit down and enjoy what this rookie season is, regardless of whether they're up 2 or down 25 on a given night. But just seeing what he does on an individual basis. He just kept getting better and better and better, and his game evolved almost week to week after we met at the halfway point. And it became so clear to me that there has to be something that we mark him down as, within history. And, all rookie first team unanimously is not going to cut it, in my opinion. I think there has to be some other demarcation of how just insane a season he just had. Coming in from overseas, we know the reputation of French players is not sterling, whether that's fair or not. And that was imposed on him on draft night. Like, are we sure about this kid? Are we sure? We're sure, and I'm sure he's the defensive player of the year. So I mean, and if you think there's a lot of advanced stats for Jokic, you triple that for Wemby probably. And there are, like the MVP, other deserving names, but they're just not this kid. So I think it's Wembanyama for me, and this is one. that I struggled with a bit at the midseason point, and this was not an issue for me at the end of the season.
I'm going to read you. It has not been registered yet because the season just ended, but I'm going to read you the names ahead of him all time in just blocks per game in a single season. Like the most from 76 years or whatever, 77 years of history.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read you the names ahead of him. David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Kareem at 3 and 4, David Robinson again at 5 and 6,
yep.
and Hakeem at 7. Victor would slot in at 8th all time in the most blocks per game in a single season.
I mean, that's yeah.
There are 3 names ahead of him: David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
That's just, and you can find all of them in one place. It's the Hall of Fame. That is just.
And it may be incorrect too. I may have not queried it right. Like for those attacking me right now, Mark Eaton probably had like a 5.4 block per game season.
I think he holds the record.
Ungodly reason.
In all honesty, I looked at it. I think he does hold the record.
But again, my query might be a little off. I'm just making that abundantly clear. I'm sorry. Regular season, any season per game, no qualifications otherwise, and it's just ranking every NBA player. And I sorted blocks per game by top to bottom, but it doesn't matter.
The fact that we think that we have to look that up is just absurd.
Yeah. So here's where I landed. Not to like cut you off where you were, but just want to make this abundantly clear. Okay. My eyes ultimately have to matter. I mean, I made that very clear a couple times, like throughout these podcasts we've done before. When you watch him, and I'm not even talking about the 3-on-1, like the 3-on-1 that everyone's going to play, and it's going to come to mind where he like contests that it's him. I'm just going to relive it for a second. He's in the paint. There's a guy attacking the rim. And I'm vaguely remembering it here, right? But the guy makes the one pass. He is able to turn and transition from the pass to the shot to make sure it gets blocked or make sure it gets contested. They get it out to the third guy who leaked out to the corner, which is the perfect basketball play, by the way. 2 guys attacking the rim.
Yeah.
1 guy passing off on the handoff or on like a bounce pass, whatever, to get the guy under. Obviously, you can't bounce pass under Victor's 8-foot wingspan. It's just not happening. And then he's able to turn to his right and make a right-handed closeout to the corner. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if he eventually blocked the shot or not, but he probably did.
He affected the shot. Yeah.
Regardless of that, there are so many of those plays this year that I can recall to that I don't care about any other number with Rudy. There is nobody right now that makes a greater impact offensively in the NBA when he's on the floor. There's no one else.
No.
People are going to spew at us. They're like 24th in team defense. I think that's a testament to the team around him more than him.
Yes.
So that's it. That's all I wrote no stats down. I literally wrote 0.
Which is why they're 12 and 70 as well, despite his just incredible season. But yeah, you can't penalize for the rest of the team. They picked number 1 for a reason. I mean, you could say that it was in the frozen envelopes or whatever, but they were a bad team, and he has not, miraculously fixed this team, but from what you can pinpoint on an individual basis, there is no question, at least in my mind, it sounds like your mind as well, that he's Defensive Player of the Year. So I have nothing but appreciation for the fact that we agreed there, in all honesty.
I told you at the top that I thought about it really hard and struggled with it, but then the more I realized what I said, it's between him and Rudy. There's no questions asked. I have the New York Post posted the odds at 9 a.m. on the 14th when everything got finalized last night. Which I guess technically that would have been before the season ended, but you get my point. They closed with Rudy being the minus 2,500 favorite, and Victor was plus 950. It's okay.
He very well may not win it. Just like Shea, from what I've seen on confirmed ballots, whatever Twitter accounts are to be believed with that, it's likely going to be Jokic for MVP, which is fine. I'm okay with being against. At least if I have a strongly held belief, if that does not reflect in the awards that are announced in like 6 months when no one even remembers this stuff anymore, so I will sleep just fine at night.
We should be talking about them Friday, like straight up. We should be talking about them after play-in's over. It's dumb.
Let Doc Rivers MC on April 30th every year and just get it over with. I don't know.
To call back to the MVP really quick, Nikola Jokic minus 500. This is via FanDuel.
I've been tracking that. Yeah,
Defensive Player of the Year was Bet MGM, but nonetheless, Jokic was minus 5,000. Luka was 21-1, and Shea was 46-1.
I'm sure NBA Twitter will give Luka a nice trophy. I get it, but
yeah.
That being said, Yeah,
We've already addressed it.
Unfortunate. Yeah, there's always a third place guy. He is the third place guy. If that's not enough flowers, then I'm sorry. Beat the Clippers. Even though it's playoffs.
Anything else about Victor defensively that needs to be said? Because he's about to get brought up again for me. Shocker.
I think that's.
I don't know.
It is literally indescribable, and we tried to describe it. And honestly,
stupid.
Just go watch highlights. You can watch defensive highlights of him, just defensive, and be
just don't even watch highlights. Spend the $12 on League Pass. Like it's worth. He alone made NBA League Pass worth every $1 this year.
Yeah, it's 50 cents a day, and it's
I don't know how in my right mind I could have a conscience and tell you that I picked a guy for Defensive Player of the Year but didn't give him Rookie of the Year since he's a freaking rookie, for crying out loud. So I'm just going to make my life easier, and I'm just going to tell you I have him for Rookie of the Year, and if you have Chet, I'm not going to cry about it.
I don't. I tried to sit down and like ease my way. I don't.
I really didn't believe you. I was like, wait, what? Okay.
No, I really did sit there and try. Like, what can I say that makes me not sound like just a biased hack? And there's nothing.
I did a whole open on it this year. I did a whole open on it.
Play the year for you with the midseason point.
Yeah. Right, because I was trying to be objective. I was trying to be like, okay, let's be real with ourselves for a second. It's not probably him, but
he is the victim of the most hyped draft prospect since LeBron James, maybe Zion, probably LeBron James.
Yeah,
living up to
skip Zion altogether. It's LeBron. Period. Yeah,
he lived up to it. Now, if he had missed more than, if he was under the threshold, this is easy. If the defensive numbers were not ridiculous, this is easy. If he's not adding tools like mid-game twice a week, this is easy. But I mean, I'll say one thing about Chet Holmgren: 82 games played. So all the durability idiots on Twitter that had MDs next to their purchased blue check marks, you're all idiots. He played every game this year. He is by far the best second-year player. And the rookie thing is unfortunate as far as, yes, he's a rookie. Yes, he's a second-year pro. But I think, if nothing else, he deserves flowers for playing all 82 games. Just given he missed all 82 last year in a freak accident in Seattle, which people in Seattle probably love because the Thunder came from there and they didn't like that, which is tough. It's been 20 years to get over it. But I think that if nothing else is mentioned from this season for Chet because he's in the shadow of 7'15" Victor Wembanyama, let it be that he played all 82 games. He was excellent defensively. He got beat up, pushed around, bloody face, bloody nose, teeth chipped, I'm sure. And he stood up to it, and he held his own, I think, very well for 82 games. Every single game on the schedule he played. There's like maybe 10 guys in the league that did that all season. And Kassan Wallace was another one, the lesser-known Thunder rookie, technically.
I have it right here. With that duo. I have the 82-game club right here if you want me to read it.
9 guys, maybe?
Sabonis. This is in no particular order, I think, based on StatHead. Buddy Hield played 84 games this year. Indiana, Philly. I don't know how that happened, but that's really funny.
That's cheating.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm still trying to sit here and figure out how that's possible. Yeah, I don't know. So 83 I can understand, but 84 is what's getting me. Sabonis, Chet, Jonas Valanciunas, shout out. Peyton Pritchard, he started 5 of those. Austin Reeves, that one surprises me. Paul Reed, Obi Toppin, Bobby Portis, Harrison Barnes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mikal Bridges, and Cason Wallace. Christian Brown, Jalen Green. Sorry, I thought the list was over. George Niang, Reggie Jackson. That's the list. So, yeah, it's impressive, is my point. I was just bringing it up as just hey, most of those guys are role players except for him and Sabonis.
Yeah, and Pritchard is a product of the Celtics winning like 85 games this year. So that's also impressive.
I think this is an insane hypothetical, but I'm just going to ask because I feel like it would be a disservice to this podcast and you if I didn't ask this. Would Chet have won last year over Paolo, knowing what we know, assuming maybe he did, maybe he sat out 2 years and was still eligible? I don't know. Like however you want to
carbon copying this year's output last year
for the sake of example, probably. Yeah.
Oh, I think absolutely. I think people left draft night. Oh, he had a hell of a year. It'd be similar to this year with Chet. Like, yes, you lived up to it. Yes, you've been incredible. But there's one guy on the planet. Right. Yeah. There's one guy on the planet that outdid you this year. And he happens to be a rookie. and he happens to beat you for this award. And I think it would have been a compelling case last year too. And obviously, we hope every year that every guy drafted plays every game. It's incredibly rare, just because of role and what's needed of rookies in certain places in certain cities, and what you're enjoying as an organization when you get there. Um, but the fact that we selected Chet 2 years ago and now he's the number one overall seed, excuse me, number one seed in the West, in his playoff debut, I think is incredible. So, I, yes, I think he beats out Paolo just because there was a hot debate on draft night of who was the best player in the draft. I don't think we had that with Victor's draft necessarily. So I think that added fan to the flames. Would have made it fun to sit and break down and give thoughts on. But I think ultimately, if you're giving me 23 Chet and 22, I think he takes home that award.
Something that to look at, we can move on, I promise. But something to look at when it comes to, we've had 2 awards technically, and we're 40 minutes in. Shocker. 3 awards. Win shares per 48 is something that is rated very highly for rookies because of the minutes and the lack of role and that kind of thing. It's literally one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 counting stats listed on Basketball Reference. It's one of the 10 listed is win shares per 48. Paolo was .047 last year. Chet's this year went .178. So, I mean, he clears him in impact. And I understand it was winning in the situation, but that's a significant number. And if it's that close, I'd have to do an even deeper dive into it. Again, stupid hypothetical that I don't have an answer to. All right. Let's keep going because I think this is where it kind of picks up speed a little bit. 6th man of the year, I went with, I'll tell you the 2 candidates that we probably both have. Is it Malik Monk and Naz Reid?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to lay out the fact that Naz Reid started the season as a 150-1 favorite, or odd, whatever you want to call it, whatever word, insert there.
Right.
As of yesterday, Malik Monk was -250. Naz Reid was +225. If someone in this world has a 150-1 ticket for Naz Reid on 6th man of the year, call me. I will put my phone number on YouTube for 0.5 seconds and pause it and find it. Call me, please. I went with Naz Reid, and here's the only reason. They both, I think Naz Reid started a few games. I had to pull it up really quick.
He did when Cat was hurt. Yes,
yeah, perfect. But that doesn't excuse the fact that doesn't excuse the fact that up until that point he did not basically the entire year. And then head-to-head wise, or just like stat comparison wise, Malik Monk did win the season series against each other 2-0, for what it's worth, if that matters to anybody. 80 games to 72 games played. So Naz Reid, if you think about the 8 games that he played more than Malik, subtract that from the 14. It's really, he only started that much of a difference. Malik leads in points. Naz Reid leads in rebounds. Malik leads in assists. I made that case at the midseason mark. He was basically the point guard when De'Aaron Fox was off the floor. And then Naz Reid leads in the following categories: steals, blocks, for field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. This is a big, we're talking about on multiple attempts, 3 to 5 attempts a game. I have to pull up that exact number. Effective field goal percentage, blocks plus minus, and VORP. He leads in basically every single statistical category and only leads in points per game, or doesn't lead in points per game by 2. And he's the winning impact player on a team that is 3rd in the Western Conference, with their 2nd best player being hurt. 3rd best player, depending on who you ask. And the Kings are the 9 seed. I'm going to go with the guy that impacted winning on a better level. I went with Naz Reid.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you can look at the starts. I do have it with me. Monk did not start a game, and Naz Reid started 14. He was pressed into that role because, as we mentioned, Karl-Anthony Towns was hurt. Speaking of injuries, unfortunately, Monk has not played since the calendar flipped to April because of an MCL sprain, I believe, off the top of my head. So I had it, neck and neck until then. The last 2 weeks of the season don't shape an entire award, but when they're that close and a guy misses, I think that's important. Minnesota is the 3 seed, as you mentioned, because of what he was able to accomplish in those starts when they didn't have Towns. I realized it is a 6-man award, but you'd like to think the guy can step up if he's pressed into duty. Monk didn't really have that chance necessarily, but I think what Naz did in the time he did have as a starter for this team, I think it was 12 games or so in consecutive fashion when Towns was hurt. I think he's kind of back now. I'm not sure, but this cuts off after game 82, so it doesn't really matter. So I give it to Naz Reid for that. You mentioned the stats. He's very actually competent and then some from 3. I watched a good bit of Minnesota down the stretch just because of their closeness to Oklahoma City in the standings. Just kind of keep an eye on what they were doing night to night. And he played excellently well. Fantasy leagues do not matter, but I had him in my fantasy league when Towns went down. He was excellent, very efficient, which is kind of what I can glean from that beyond much else. So I think, like we've mentioned a couple times now, there are two clear guys, and I think unfortunately for Monk, missing the first 2 weeks of this month, the last 2 weeks of the season for me, kind of made me feel a bit better about giving it to Nas Reed. So I will join you on the Nas Reed train for 6-man.
Just goes to show you that betting is always and will be, no matter how smart we think we are, is a crapshoot.
Yes.
150 to 1 is insane. Let's move on. Most improved player. I genuinely, to this moment, just like last time, don't have an answer, so I'm going to ask you.
I think it comes down to two guards, both in the East. I think it's Kobe White or Tyrese Maxey. And I think just because this was close for me, I think Kobe White's a great story, underrated because the team he plays on and their lack of direction as a franchise.
Somehow,
so I did give it to Maxey, which he should get credit for. But I did go with Maxey. I think I've been following his career, since the draft. I think he's one of the more polarizing players in the league. Doesn't get a lot of credit because of the bigger stars per se that were in Philadelphia. They had Jimmy, they had Harden, they still have Embiid. This is not an elite team in the East anymore, at least just because of Embiid's lengthy absence, unfortunately, with the knee issue. So I think that's, I don't think Maxey should be dinged for how the team did without the best player there. I think his improvement has kept them alive. They had math to get out of the play-in. I don't think they're firmly in the play-in, but I just think that the kind of leaps he's had, I think he's started the year as a better player than Kobe White. He's still a better player than Kobe White. But I think the jumps, as you get into the upper tiers of NBA players, those jumps get much, much more difficult. And so I gave Maxey the lean just because he was a known quantity coming in. They expected him to do well. And I think he still outperformed expectations. So Kobe White deserves to be a finalist for this, deserves credit for, helping DeMar DeRozan keep this team afloat. Without Levine, without Ball, Caruso, I don't know if he missed games this year. I feel like he's been dinged up in the past. My memory might be extending past this season alone, and I'll mention Caruso later as well. But I think both played pivotal roles in their teams being in the postseason. But I went with Maxey just because, like I mentioned, the degree of difficulty with improvement as you rise among the ranks of players in the NBA just gets that much more difficult. So I went with Maxey for this.
I'm just going to concede and say that I was between Maxey and Jalen Williams. I'm surprised.
See, I'm with you as far as in midseason we said, do second-year guys really need the nod for this?
They don't ever get it. I mean, it's just straight up. They just
right.
Don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at
good.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at where did the guy start, where did the guy finish, I think it's Jalen Williams. But as far as and like I mentioned, I think that Maxey was the known quantity. He had expectations that were much higher, at least initially, than Jalen Williams, and I think he exceeded those. And Jalen Williams, I think, should be the third finalist in all honesty, but I just don't think. And we can go into market narratives, et cetera. I could give you all the tinfoil hat stuff, but I think that for what it's worth, Philadelphia being more of a basketball city per se than Oklahoma City, whether that's fair or not. I think Maxey will win, but I think there's absolutely a case for Kobe White and Jalen Williams.
Yeah, I don't think there's another third candidate. I think it's those three. I think the real argument is the guy that I would have voted for if he played 65 games on the dot would be Şengün. So the guy I would actually have is probably the real winner. Is the guy that wasn't even eligible because he played 63 games. He went from 14.8 to 21.1 when he became the focal point of the offense. He went from 3.9 assists to 5 assists, only half a rebound up, but led half a percent up in steals. They were good, played better defense. 3-point percentage went down a little bit, but ultimately he was taking from 9.9 2-point attempts a game or 10 field goals total to 16 field goals total is crazy. And I think he was an incredible player this year. I think just what I saw, I think would have talked me into that. So the real winner for me is Alperen Şengün, but I'll give it to Tyrese Maxey because that's who I also had. I just wanted to hear if I was just missing somebody. And the odds believe us, by the way. The odds are, I'll pull up the same document I've had this entire time. Most improved player, Tyrese Maxey, as of the Well, he had a 52 point. By the way, he had a 52-point game to end the season. Like the last week of the season, he had a 52-point game, and that
That didn't
probably
hurt.
boosted
Yeah.
his odds. According to this, he went from near a pick'em with Kobe White to minus 2,000 within a week. So minus 2,000.
We saw Embiid drop 50 late last year. That kind of shifted Sands a bit with
100%.
that. So I mean, it's
Coach of the year.
Absolutely.
Give me 1 minute. Why it's not Mark Daigneault? Just kidding. No,
I don't know if I give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, it led the second youngest team in the NBA. I wanted to make that abundantly clear. 23.8 years to San Antonio's 23.5. And then the number one seed in the Western Conference. I don't think there's an argument for anybody. Joe Mazzulla's of the world don't win this award. Like, it's just one of those things that just doesn't happen enough.
Joe Mazzulla, stay out of the way. That's okay. We can.
There's just guys like that like probably should win this award every year. Not Joe Mazzulla specifically, but just the number one seed with the best record and da 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 da. It's the reason that Phil Jackson, all things considered, Phil Jackson only has. I'm just going to pull it up because I think it's worthwhile. Talking about, regardless of what you think about
less than 5, there's a problem.
Yeah. He has. Dang it! They don't shout out to Basketball Reference for not organizing it properly. They organize Coach of the Month. That's awesome. He has 1 Coach of the Year.
That's insane.
That can't be right.
There's no no. That there's got to be
Organize
a search
it.
filter.
Here's the rankings. 89-90, he was 7th. 90-91, 4th. 3rd, 2nd. He won it 95-96. Unanimously, I think that looks like almost. No, just kidding. Not unanimously, but still in the 80 percentile. 7th, 2nd, 14th. What? 8th, 7th, 5th, 8th, 9th.
That is a trivia question I would get wrong.
Yeah, we're going to bookmark that one and not use that one for your episode, but we'll do that for whoever else. But great caveat. How many Coach of the Year awards? Yeah, okay. Enough. Yeah. Mark Daigneault's the Coach of the Year. Any parting thoughts on that thought as we keep moving?
The biggest one being, you mentioned off the top, the average age. If you take Gordon Hayward off his team, they're the youngest team in the NBA.
I'm pretty sure that number was preseason. Just to be clear, I think that number was preseason. I could not find an accurate number, and I wasn't doing the math. I'll just be real with you. I just wasn't.
That's really, really, really in the weeds. But yeah, so I'll give you that. But I mean, it has to be Daigneault. The coaches themselves voted today. Daigneault narrowly edged out Doc Rivers, I'm assuming, for this award amongst the coaches. So that's complete sarcasm. But I think that
I was like, all right.
If the jury of his peers is going to put forth that opinion, I have no doubt. I think that the national media and talking heads, who I think have to watch the Thunder now, which is nice, because given the option, they probably wouldn't. But that's just how polarizing this team has been all year. So I mean, it's Daigneault. They improved by another 15, 17 wins this year. I think when you consider expectations when he was hired, my first question was, who the hell is that? It has just been incredible to watch. We've got LeBron and JJ Redick talking about him like bi-weekly on their new podcast. Although not too much, because LeBron even said that we might see them. And if the rumors are true and they throw the playing game tomorrow, then potentially we get Lakers Thunder round 1, which is terrifying, frankly.
I cannot. I saw that report and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't understand. Yeah,
that's just getting real careful with that stuff. But it's Daigneault, and it's not that just he's the guy standing there. He's got an incredible arsenal of plays that get spilled out on the white clipboard, out of bounds, side out, in the game, you name it. He's finding ways to get our guys the ball, get them open shots. It's amazing to watch. I had just no real thought when he first got hired, but kind of seeing the progression of him and his handle on a very young team, which, as we've seen in places like Houston, is not always easy to do. He has kept basketball the focus. The team barely put on division champ shirts, which is just absurd when you consider that who else is in that division, namely the Nuggets. So, I mean, he's got them focused on all the right things, and he is the leader of men, and he's 20 years older than all of them, and he's still one of the youngest coaches in the league. So I think that this season in particular, the amount of respect for him, I think nationally, has grown to somewhere close to what he deserves, and it has been severely lacking in the past. And so I think that The full season of this result, clinching the 1 seed with a dominant win over everybody the Mavericks usually don't play, which is a whole other thing. But I'm extremely excited for him. He's not one to acknowledge individual success at all when it comes to his own accolades and what's coming for him down the line. So I think that he might crack a smile when they give this to him, but I think that he absolutely should get it. And this is the first one where I'm like, it is the winner, and then there are the rest. I don't think there's really, other than, of course, Missoula, the 12-game lead on the East, et cetera, number one overall seed. But if Phil Jackson doesn't get the nod for having the best teams, then I don't think Joe Missoula should. So
no, I'd be floored. So his record over the last couple of years, 14 games under 500
still.
Yeah, which is sad. 0.45%. 45%. 14 games under 500, 17 games under 500, 1 game under 500, 16 games over 500. He finished second last year, so by God, if he doesn't win it, it's
right. He was the finalist last year. Yeah, that matters.
So, all right, let's be really quick on these next two. Clutch Player of the Year. I know we probably have different answers. Clutch Player of the Year. I went with Kyrie Irving, and I'll give you my 30-second elevator pitch why. Plus minus was 3.8, which I believe was fourth best. I'd have to double check. I don't think it really matters. But he had a positive plus minus in clutch, which is impressive nonetheless. In a 50-something, he's not eligible. Damn it!
I don't care. I wasn't gonna say it. I was gonna let you go and then be like, he did play 58 games, but I see your point.
I'll give you the rest of the case, and I'll tell you why. 16-4 record in the clutch,
which matters.
60, 42, 95 splits.
That'll play.
What? 4.2 points per game, which does rank second to one guy we're going to talk about in just a second, I know for a fact. Craziest buzzer beater I have ever seen in a long time. Mid-range switch hands, left-handed deep flow. Like, the moment is what stuck out to me. It was like, okay, all the stats
That's the clutch shot of the year, I think.
Which adds to the case. Yeah. But then I realized he doesn't play 65 games. So you know what? It's DeMar DeRozan, isn't it?
It is, yes.
They're under 500. I don't... Anyway.
But the 20.16 in the clutch, I think that needs to be said. You can separate that from their atrocious record outside of those games. He's got a 119 offensive rating individually in clutch time, which is the last 5 minutes of the game, which if you're saying, why does Kyrie's 4 points a game matter? It's a very short and tiny sliver of games. So you only have that last 5 minutes. 97.1 defensive rating. I think that should matter a bit. I know he's getting up there in age, but that shows, he's at least going all out on both ends these last 5 minutes of games. He's got a better plus minus than Steph Curry, a name I think that will come up if you glance at odds for this. The 2-point and 3-point shooting edge went to Steph, but it was very marginal. And in game 82, if we're talking, what have you done for me lately? They pushed the Knicks to the brink. I think a 1-point loss in overtime. He had 5 points in the waning minutes of that game, sent it to the extra period.
We'll get to that game very shortly. It's on the list for me to talk about.
So, I think it's DeRozan. He's kind of been known under the radar as a clutch player. He does play for the Bulls, who do not win a lot of games, period. But I think the fact that they've won 24 or 40 when given a great chance to steal a game speaks volumes to me. And that was the reason I went with DeRozan for this.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. I could sit here and pluck around stats. Technically, Michael Porter Jr. has the most wins, 54% from the field. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't care who wins it, but if Kyrie played 65 games, it should have been Kyrie Irving, as ridiculous as that sounds out loud. Executive of the Year, I'm going to lay out Brad Stevens' case, and then if you have anything to say, I'm going to put a clock for 30 seconds because I'd be surprised if this award gets talked about publicly for more than a minute. Willing to make change. I went Brad Stevens, to be clear. Being willing to make changes that were necessary. He traded for Drew Holiday by trading away Marcus Smart, traded for Kristaps Porzingis, which is a risk in and of itself. I know some of this is gambles paying off, but he brought in 2 top assistants, Charles Lee and Sam Cassell, and he stuck with Joe Mazzulla and brought confidence to that locker room. That case alone, I don't know how anyone wins Executive of the Year other than I know there's a Sam Presti out there and all that stuff. But the fact that those moves led to a 14-game lead in the East or whatever the hell it was, it's Brad Stevens.
I also focused on this year. I also focused on transactions. For me, I went with Nico Harrison, who, if you don't know who that is, on Google, that is the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, because at the deadline,
It's good.
He brought
It's
in
good.
PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. I think they're 22-9 post deadline, good for third in the NBA behind the Thunder and Boston, probably. I think that for what this team was, which is before the season, which was it's Luka, a point guard who may be serious at like some points in the season. He played 58 games. Relative to Kyrie's normal, he's been very normal, which is impressive. I don't know how he pulled that off. He must be burning a lot of sage in Dallas. I have no idea. But he's had that team in the thick of it. They're in the 4-5 with the Clippers. We don't know about Kawhi yet. That's going to be a hell of a series. It has been in the past. I'm terrified to play this team should the Thunder emerge from the 1-8, just because of how good they got. I think you said it to me more than anybody that Daniel Gafford should have been on the Thunder. That's just how much respect I think we both had for that move and what it meant to Dallas and how much better they got. Derek Lively has been good. He is a rookie. You don't want to lean on those guys too much in the postseason. So the addition of both of those guys, I think, has done a lot of things for Denver, both in record-wise. They're true, I think, case to make a run in the postseason, even having to go through the 1 seed. You could argue they did well to miss Denver. We'll see how that plays out. But for me, I went with the midseason approach. And if I had any other thoughts, the Stevens case, as far as overall record and what that played into it, and the sticking by Missoula, I think, deserves a lot more credit than people think. He was not a popular guy in the streets of Boston or anywhere else, but he stuck by him and has produced this result. They're the best team in the NBA. The records reflect that, especially in the East. They wrapped up the East in February, and they've ebbed and flowed like any other team. But to your point, Brad Stevens being the mastermind up top, overseeing the court, has produced a hell of a team, and they're going to be a tough out in the East, let alone the NBA.
Look, I don't know how else I need to tell people that you're getting incredible value when you listen to the Two Pointers podcast. We just talked about Executive of the Year for 2 minutes at the 59-minute mark. I don't know what else I need to give these folks, because this is
Bill Simmons will not do that.
Yeah, this is incredible stuff. All right, so let's get into some fun stuff. All NBA teams are next. Again, I don't know how we're going to spend more than 2 minutes on All NBA first team, because I would be floored. I would be floored if we had, honestly, All NBA first and second. We should have lockstep. After that, it's a conversation, I think. But I'll go ahead and give you my first team and see where we are. Actually, we'll do this. I know that talking about the award, we won't get into the conversation, was the forward thing. I'll do it at the end. I still went with guard, forward, center.
I gravitated towards it naturally, and I didn't feel like switching
you
that
didn't
up.
feel forced, basically.
Right. It felt a bit, especially first team. That was I could have not known their positions, just watched them play basketball. That first team didn't change for me. But I didn't feel necessarily boxed in by just, hey, you could have 3 centers this year. I didn't feel the urge to do that.
So we'll just go one by one. Do you have Shea?
Yes.
I love just asking it. Just the thought of that question is funny. Luka.
Yes.
Tatum.
Yes.
Giannis.
Yes.
Jokic.
Yes.
Okay. Before we end up on some tangent that we didn't plan for, a couple of things. Giannis is considered a forward/guard, so that makes it pretty easy, right? Jokic is a center/forward. So really the positions, Jokic or Luka is considered guard forward. Shea is just considered straight up a guard.
Yes.
And then Tatum is considered, and I'm organizing this by win shares. So wow, the fact that Tatum's 10th is a forward. So none of that was weird. Fine.
Right.
Here's the only thing I'm going to bring up before we get into second team. On the broadcast on Sunday, Knicks Bulls, Doris Burke brought up that she'd had a conversation with a voter for awards. So she did not say this. This is an anonymous voter. Remember the game I just said?
My friend said, yeah.
Knicks Bulls. Yeah, with a voter for the award. She is not a voter, to be clear. I will give her defense in there. She is not a voter, which is kind of interesting when you think about it.
I assumed she was. That's surprising.
She had a conversation with a voter for the awards, and that person said, quote, and I'm paraphrasing roughly. As soon as I heard it, sure. I ran to my laptop. Could Brunson end up on the first team over Giannis because of the Bucks' lack of success? That was the quote. Okay. I'm going to read you Giannis's case. Of course, we both agree, so this is kind of moo a little bit, but here's why. Yeah. Giannis averaged 30.4 points per game on 61.1% field goal percentage. No player, zero players in NBA history have ever averaged 30 with over 60% from the field. The closest guy was Kareem, and he averaged 30 point whatever and 57%. The Bucks were a 3 seed, firing a coach with 30 wins.
Which was
tell
terrible.
me lack of success is insane to me. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. This isn't an argument or a debate. I doubt we were going to even I'm just making this point because this is an insane thing that was brought up.
I mean, they wouldn't start Brunson in the All-Star game 8 weeks ago. Like, what are we doing?
And by the way, if he finishes top 5 in MVP voting, that doesn't make him a first-team All-NBA player. I love New York. Right. I love the media. I love everybody involved around that organization other than
those
James
are
Dolan.
Separate entities.
However, but to tell me those are the parameters that I was told, and to tell me that's the case is lunacy. So with that out of the way, I just wanted to. I knew that you weren't going to have anything with it.
That needed to be said, though. I think that's.
I didn't prepare you for it, and that's why I didn't say anything because I just wanted to make it abundantly clear. I was going to play a game and be like, "How many players have averaged 30 points per game and 60% from the field?" It's 0. Actually, it's 1. Yeah. His name's Giannis.
Now it's
ridiculous.
1.
Anyway, all right. So we've agreed on the first team.
Yes.
Second team, because obviously I want to get to some of the stupid awards people are actually going to listen to. We'll go again. I like the one by one thing. Funny enough, Brunson. I went with Jalen Brunson here.
Yes, easily for me. Yes.
Anthony Edwards.
Yes.
That's the only guy I would argue on the first team. My question would be, who the hell did he take off?
That's the thing is you
don't.
And I get in sort of discourse and one of the, in my opinion, more clear-cut first-team All-NBAs in recent memory.
There's a real interesting argument. They always are pretty clear-cut, to be clear. I think there's a weird there's some outlier years, but there are. The more
that
I
speaks
thought
to
about
how
it,
good these players are.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Kevin Durant.
2 for 2. Yes.
Okay, love that. Kawhi.
I have him third.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I'm just writing it down so I know where we are. And then Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. The question is, who do you have instead of Kawhi? That's really where it gets weird.
Have you heard of him, LeBron James?
Okay, so all right, I hate to do this because we've never done this on a pod, but just make the argument for why. Over Kawhi.
I know what year he's in. I watch him. He's putting up triple doubles now, albeit in Game 82. That was an important game for seeding. They thumped New Orleans. Now, will that carry over to tomorrow night? When you're listening, or excuse me, Wednesday night. It is tomorrow night. We'll let him play it out when you listen to this on Wednesday, on Tuesday. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Regular season. I just think I have so much respect for what he's been able to accomplish. And I get it. The team relative to their 2 best players sucks. Fine. I get it. New Orleans is right down. Or not New Orleans. The Clippers peaked in February. They had kind of sputtered. Kawhi is hurt. Kawhi is an All-NBA player. But I am in true awe of what LeBron James has been able to do statistically. I think he locked up like 27-7, whatever he's done for like 9 straight years that nobody's ever done consecutively, whatever that stat is. I'm paraphrasing, which is my fault for not writing it down. But I just think that, again, how are we going to demarcate certain players, certain years, certain points in their career? LeBron James is a top 10 player in the league, and that may not translate to all NBA teams, especially if we had the positional rigidity, but we don't. So I just chose he was going to be in one of my 3 teams, and I gave him the edge, the second team, just due to degree of difficulty, because there's no tougher opponent in the NBA than Father Time, and he has, frankly, whooped his ass for 20 years now. And the fact that he's still in the discussion, and I get their play-in team for like every time the Lakers have been in the postseason, they've been here since the play-in was incarnated. And that quote from him when they first did it is not going to age nearly as well as he has, unfortunately. But be that as it may, I've got to get LeBron here and to have any kind of conscience about where I chose to essentially award what he's done this season. And, putting team success aside for a bit.
So that's the question, though. Perfect ending to that. Does it, talking about conscious, does it bother you that you have 2 players, not even like 2 players period in the 15, but 2 players period at 47 and 35? I get the record's positive, but they're 8th seeded in the West. Does that bother you? You have 2 guys in the top 10 Let's just be real. It's a 1 through 5, 5 through 10, 5 through 15.
Right.
It's just how you have to look at it. Does it bother you that there's 2 guys on an 8 seed team on the second team?
When I look at the East standings and I look at the West standings and I consider the players, if you did an all play-in team, West versus East, I think the West would be arrested for aggravated assault because they would absolutely murder the Eastern Conference.
It's so true.
There are more Hall of Famers on the West play-in side than there are all-stars on the East play-in side. Well, and I think that, the West is hard, whatever, but this year it is truly stark when you look at differences from league to league. And I think that even being a play-in team, the Rockets could be like the 6th or 7th seed in the East. I don't think without much difficulty. Obviously, that would take a little more from Şengün, whatever.
11 of my top 15 are from the West. They're sure.
Yeah, just count that. I mean, what are we doing? Yeah.
When you said I looked down and I was like, 1, 2, 3. Hold on. I was like, let me add them up really quick while you're talking. And I was like,
That's not to say the East doesn't have good teams, but
that's going to be the argument. That's going to be the argument.
I'm a fan of the 1 seed. I don't want to play the 8 seed. Are you kidding me? I get the Heat do this zombie routine every year, and they beat the Celtics, whatever.
We'll get to them.
But
yeah,
the West is terrifying. And to think I'm sitting here like, oh, please be the 3 seeds. We get the Pelicans. We have Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, Valanciunas. The fact that I'm scared to be the 1 seed in the West because of who we could see as the 8 seed, I think tells me all I need to know.
Yep. All right. I went with Kawhi because of a little bit of the team success, but also the fact that he has weathered a little bit of the injuries as well. When he was off the floor this year, that team was completely different. Anthony Davis helped the Lakers win a lot more games than I think people realized whenever LeBron was off the floor. That was really the only argument I had. I don't care either way because I do think he's probably deserving of it.
Quickly, how much do you give credit to Russell Westbrook for having this team look like they care?
Look,
on a nightly basis when he was injured versus when he was not.
My opinion.
That's my only point of contention with that.
Is abundantly clear, like on this podcast, that it has changed 62 times since he's left Oklahoma City. However, I can't understate how important Kawhi is as the impact guy on the floor on both ends. And I took the both ends part into consideration. Well, and it's not even that; it's the defensive aspect of it as well. Again, I can sit here and pick stats. Yeah. Right, and I had to ultimately, example, Anthony Davis is 6th. Not that we're arguing Anthony Davis here, but he's on the second team with LeBron. Anthony Davis is 6th in win shares. LeBron is 16th. Kawhi is only 1 spot ahead of LeBron. So, there's minimal differences there. Anthony Davis was the most impactful player on that team. So I was basically looking at it as the second best player on the Lakers versus the best player on the Clippers. So I know that Russell Westbrook was incredible to the Clippers. Yeah. Look, and it's at the end of the day, you have to draw the line somewhere, and I eventually drew the line at the fact that Kawhi. This team is a 9 seed without Kawhi. He just is. Even with Westbrook being on the floor and helping them out,
Westbrook complements what Kawhi has been able to accomplish. I think that's a correct way to put it. Absolutely
changes the entire pace of the game, but ultimately it came down to Kawhi being that kind of player, which is why I talked about it. I don't care that we disagree there because honestly, I think both answers are right. Third team. Steph?
Yes.
Yeah, even with the fact that he played 65 games this year, I honestly thought he played 42, but
I just felt like he did. Honestly.
Devin Booker.
Yes.
Paul George.
Did not have him.
Okay, this is where we're going to get into a discussion. It's going to be really interesting because I have some left off. I have a really long list of left off guys, and we'll get to it. I went with LeBron as my. I'm saving one player on purpose for 15th, just to be clear.
So in the Kawhi spot. Okay, yeah.
LeBron, you had Kawhi. So basically we flipped the two.
Yes, right.
The last guy I had was Jaylen Brown.
See, he's at the top of my honorable mention list. I had Sabonis.
Okay. So this is really just a matter of, do you like prime rib or do you like sirloin? And I'll tell you why that joke is stupid and why it's right. Jaylen Brown is sirloin. Okay? Let's just make it abundantly clear, right? Sirloin's only good when it does certain things. I'll leave it at that and let people figure out what I mean by that with Jaylen Brown. However, they are 64-18, and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, no, I hear it. Every bit of that. Yeah.
Is, if you did the pie chart, normally I call it the blame chart. We've had that pod before, right? Where's the blame chart end up, right? If you did the pie chart of why the Celtics are 64-18, Jaylen Brown is minimum 25% of that reasoning.
Pretty big piece of that. Yes.
So whether I think Sabonis and you and Josh are in the right camp with that or not, he played 82 games. I think there's a lot of argument to be made there.
That did a lot for me, frankly. Yeah.
I gave it to Jaylen Brown because, my God, they're 14 games better than the second best team. And by the way, they're almost 10 games better than the 1 seed in the West, as you know. So,
they are head and shoulders above all other 29 teams as far as record goes. Absolutely.
Ultimately, I didn't order my left off list, but I do have Sabonis as like a guy just outside, basically.
As I do Brown. Yeah, sure.
So basically, we literally only missed one. We only disagreed on one player. So I guess my question would be like, elevator pitch me in 30 seconds Sabonis, because I don't feel like there's a wrong argument.
I think that, are they the Celtics as a team? No. I think he contributes more directly to them winning games. There is no Jason Tatum in Sacramento. There is a Malik Monk. There is a De'Aaron Fox. There are Kevin Huerter for parts of the season. Unfortunately, I think he's done for the year. The 51-2-3 double-double game streak was incredible. The Thunder ended that in like game 81. You could argue if that counts as ending it or not, whatever. So he's individually incredible. I think he buoys this team as far as how they win games. And the thing is, it's not the most conducive to playoff success, which may shape some of the narrative. Although, again, we cut this off at game 82. So it does not extend into when the Celtics maybe beat the Heat and when the Kings probably don't make it out of the play-in, to be frank. That is a very real possibility. They may have one game left in their season if they drop the game in Golden State tomorrow, Tuesday night, the 16th, so the day before you hear this. But similar to Josh, the 82 games played thing, I think, to me at that position and what he goes through, he is like a year removed from Draymond, like stomping on his ribcage. So I think that the brutality he goes through, similar to Chet, as far as durability goes, the fact that those two at the position they play and what they endure physically night in, night out, I think needs to be, again, noted down in the history books. I think that Sabonis, if you had to have a center, it's a lot easier to have that case, but we are not confined by that any longer. And, if Embiid had played a full season and we had to have centers, he would still not be on this list necessarily. So I think that for no other reason that I think that we need to recognize what he did this season a bit more than Jaylen Brown, as far as like, as a player, I think Jaylen Brown's a better player. But as we said before, that doesn't directly translate to, okay, we're not slotting 1 through 15 who's the best player in the NBA, because these teams would look crazy. But
it's also too, we try to encapsulate the 15 best players in the league that season. I think you might be right. Sabonis, regardless of how awesome the stats are, it's hard to deny that he wasn't at least really strongly considered for this. I think Jaylen Brown's been so good, though. Like, that was my only real pushback.
Oh, he absolutely has.
So I just had to give it to the guy that impacted the winning consistently enough, regardless of the team and all the charts and stuff. Here's a couple left-offs, and we'll get rolling. Any that you, I guess, not even disagree with, but just names that I just had that needed to be at least mentioned. In no particular order, to be abundantly clear, because when you hear this, you'll see why that was a caveat. Zion?
Yes. Yep.
Tyrese Maxey.
Yes, a bit further down than others, but yes.
No particular. I just threw names on. I just threw names into a hat. Tyrese Halliburton. Mm-hmm. That one feels like the weird snub.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate snub. I think. Yeah.
Again, who is kind of the question? Derek White. Right. I just threw in because we'll get to him in a second. But Derek White, Rudy Gobert. If we're talking about center, he probably gets it. I guess technically, what is Sabonis? I guess actually the question would be, what is Sabonis considered? Which, according to Basketball Reference, he is considered a center forward, so it wouldn't have mattered. Yep. Sabonis I also had, and then Damian Lillard. That's the only other one I would just. It's just.
I gave Jalen Williams that last spot, but
again, these are all just guys thrown at the wall. But I guess you.
And Zion, actually, I don't think I may have only given 4 for third team. I had Zion as my 5th guy in third team.
Oh.
So Curry, Booker, Kawhi, Zion, Sabonis was my third team. I think I may have glazed over that, but yes.
Curry, Booker, Kawhi,
Zion.
Sabonis so we disagreed on Paul George and we disagreed on Zion.
Right.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to go through the Zion argument because I think it's fair. I think he should be on there probably, but Yeah, no, I think that's great. I didn't even I missed that. So okay, so the point was ultimately still the same point. We went 13 out of 15, which
Right.
is really the number I sat down and there was two spots that I was like, okay, what are those two spots?
Mm-hmm.
And it's Brown and it's George.
Mm-hmm.
I picked LeBron as my center for this team for crying out loud because of the parameters of the lack of continuity now, or whatever award you want to call
Right.
it there. Um, ultimately, again, that's kind of the point was whether we agree on the fact that there should be positionless basketball, the fact that there's still only really 15 to 17 we came up with tells me
Mm-hmm.
that does the league really need expansion? Does the league really need this and they really need that? I think the talent's in a great place, and that should tell you that. I think it's a really weird argument to sit here and tell you that we didn't have 25
Right.
guys under consideration. I get that awards and games and all that. I get that a lot goes into it, but it is just weird that we had 13 out of 15 guys and we really only had 17 we considered. So that's
Right.
interesting. All right, let's blaze through the other weird, other regular awards so we can get to the weird ones and get out of here.
Sure.
There were only 13 eligible rookies for all rookie first and second team based on the games played parameters. There's your oh my god stat for the day. So all rookie first team I had Pajimski, Brandon Miller,
Mm-hmm.
Jaime Jaquez, Chet,
Yep.
Victor.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Moving on. I'm just doing it to document it more than anything. All rookie second
Right.
team: Keontae George,
Yep.
Cason Wallace,
Yep.
Marcus Sasser. If you have
I
someone other than
went
Marcus
Amen
Sasser, I don't
Thompson,
care.
but yeah.
Okay.
He may not
Tumani,
be games played.
Tumani Kamara,
I had Lively. Again, I
and
might be missing
then
games played here.
Trace Jackson Davis.
Yeah, he's my last guy.
Okay, so I'll look up the games played. Derek Lively's out. He played 55.
That didn't surprise me. He was hurt a lot.
And then who was the other guy you had? Amen.
Amen Thompson.
He played 62. Again, there's only 13 guys to pick from. So my point is
Which
I just picked
right.
the two best. I picked the two best guys left based
That's
on
fair.
win shares.
Mhm.
So these teams are stupid. Is my point. There should have been way more eligible players. Yeah, I really don't have a point there. Derek Lively should be on there, and Amen probably should be on there as well.
Amen triple double game 82. I was that stuck in my mind. I was like searching for that last name on here. So
as crazy as it sounds, Asar played 63. That would have been. He probably would have been on there if he played 65. Yeah.
Right.
But I think we got the basis of them right. Tumani Kamara, by the way, a guy that I had on the Portsmouth list last year when I went to Portsmouth. Shout out to Portsmouth. Can't go this year. Really sad. Starts tomorrow. But I have a ton of people going that I know too. It's really sad. I'll be getting on a cruise. It is what it is. Tumani Kamara has been incredible. I left that tournament going, why was he the best player at Portsmouth according to every single person that scouts the NBA? And then I left going, why the hell was I not on that list? So, like, of guys that thought that. So, deserving that he'll get all rookie second team. All defensive first team. We'll do the same format. We'll keep rolling. Jalen Suggs.
Yes.
I think he has an argument for defensive player of the year, so of course he's on the first team.
Right.
Derek White.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. I felt like I felt weird about that one myself, and I was like, okay, he'll probably have it though.
Mm-hmm.
Herb Jones.
Yes.
So we're probably going to go 5 for 5. Victor Wembanyama.
So these last two. Yeah, and then Gobert.
And Rudy Gobert. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
At this point, I'm about to just scrap the second team because the more I think about it, I think I have guys that didn't play that many games either. So let me start with one of them real quick and look at it. Yep. That guy's automatically out. Okay. So, all right, I'll start at the top. Alex Caruso.
Yes, who I hope played enough games. But yes.
He did. I think I did it earlier. I think I was muted when you said it. When you mentioned that point about Caruso, I think I just waited to bring it up. 71 games.
Perfect.
Right. Shea.
I did not have him on here.
What?
No. And I was this is one of those ones where I was like, oh, how many Thunder guys can I put in 10 names?
He deserves it. Let me just be clear.
He was like my 11th.
He's
probably.
tied for first in steals per game this year with
He's
2.
extremely disruptive, yeah.
And then he's second in like every defensive stat for guards. So that's the second team.
Yeah.
I think he deserves it.
Two-way, absolutely.
I'm surprised. Wow. Okay. Nikhil Alexander-Walker.
I went Jade McDaniels. Now that I think about it, may not have played enough games.
Nikhil played 82.
Yeah, that works.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. And then you went with Jalen, correct? Let me make sure I got the right
Jade
one.
McDaniels.
Jaden. See, I hate this. Jaden. I hate it here. All right.
Hope it's not
Jaden played 72.
Okay.
So I'll make our lives easier, and I'm going to take Jonathan Isaac off the list, even though I promise you Jonathan Isaac is a top 10 defensive player in this league, regardless of the minutes.
For 3 weeks a year, unfortunately.
I'm going to put McDaniels on there because of the minutes, and I had the minutes right for everyone else, or the games for everyone else. I went with Chet as the 10th player.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, Nikhil and McDaniels are interchangeable. I end up having both of them by accident. And then who was the guy you had that wasn't Shea?
Adebayo.
Oh, I considered him.
Yeah, I mean,
but the team was really bad a lot.
I
don't know how else to make that argument. I really don't. So
that's basically, a fair case. When you're comparing 1 to like 9, then that's.
It's just crazy to me that I had Shea, you had Bam. Like, it's just nuts to say that out loud.
It felt wrong leaving Bam out, and that may be, a previous year resume thing where I just couldn't get it out of my head. But
I'd love to see this real team in about a month, and then sit down on a phone call and go, "What the hell were we thinking?" Because there's probably going to be like 6 guys that we just left off.
All right, big thank you to Grayson for doing the NBA end of season awards. Don't forget that if you heard at the top, kind of the disclaimer, don't forget to check out next week whenever you hear this. If you're listening to this and it's Wednesday, the 24th or beyond of April, our not so real awards that we did, some funny awards, some team awards, things like that we made up that are really fun and really interesting that didn't have enough time, obviously, as you saw the runtime for the regular awards. But if you're hearing this, feel free to check that episode out. I am going to be out until then. You'll see a podcast and all the content on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff will be back once I return for that first week of May there. So super excited to jump into the playoffs. Again, drop a like, comment, subscribe, 5-star rating and a review is greatly appreciated. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and thank you for supporting the show.